everyone. Welcome back to the Lance Roberts Show podcast. You'll find all of our podcasts at the Lance Roberts Show podcast page. Simply go by realinvestmentadvice.com, click on the YouTube tab, and subscribe to the channel. Get this interview with Kevin Duffy, along with all of our podcasts and interviews, right there on our YouTube page at realinvestmentadvice.com. Kevin, just before the break, talking a little bit about this time preference, the inability to save. Of course, we're looking at an economy today where the net annual deficit between consumers and their cost of living is about $3,000 a year. That has to go on to debt, and wages haven't risen really to support that. And again, this kind of all feeds into this analysis we've talked about today about where we are a decade into this kind of bubble and everything, whether it's IPOs or whether it's stock prices or bond prices, et cetera. Where should investors be looking now to invest their money, or what risk should they be looking out for? What if you were going to give some advice to investors today, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it always pays to be a contrarian, but when you have these extended long trends, long bull markets, or even long bear markets, you get to inflection points and major inflection points. That's where that separates the men from the boys. And I think, one of the things we talked about, time preference. Right now, there's a very high time preference. And so as a contrarian, adopt a low time preference. Right now, and what does that mean? You talked about patience, sitting on your hands. A friend of mine in the business, he said, one of the best things you can do is a lot of times is just sit on your hands. Watch this play out. There's no reason to participate in a lot of this. So, I do believe that there's opportunity. One, if everybody is just pouring money into index funds and they think that this is a perpetual money-making machine, take the other side of that. Maybe it's time to get out of those index funds.
But Kevin, that's so hard to do when you have the media telling you every day. Look, we had a 20% sell-off last year, right? The market peaks in September of 2018. We slide 20% down to December 24th lows. And by March of this year, 2019, the media is all over the place. This is the greatest start of a year any time in the last 30 years. If you weren't in it, you missed it. Most investors are just trying to get back to even from what they lost in 2018. Those markets done nothing for 18 months, but yet the media continues to deride people for not being invested. That's a hard thing for the individual investor to not pay attention to.
It's very difficult to do. This is investing. I heard it said investing is fairly simple, but it's not easy. And part of it is that we're all kind of hardwired to want to be part of the group. This was how in the Stone Age we survived. If we thought about leaving the group, we're done. So it is part of our DNA. And even though the world has changed and and sometimes when you notice the group the herd has gone off the rails, it's very difficult because, our DNA evolution hasn't really caught up to the changes in markets. And so we, I think it really does pay to just, at this point, there's going to be, I really believe that these bubbles will unwind. There will be some hell to pay for the sins. Every booms hide a multitude of sins. And as we start to peel back the layers of this boom, those sins will be exposed like cockroaches coming out of a closet. But that's what creates opportunity. And I think now is a wonderful time to, start making your list, your buy list, and start getting prepared. Protect yourself. I think another thing you can do is commodities are very much out of favor. There's some opportunity there. Gold, weathering the printing press, having gold as a form of money, I think is not a bad idea. And then, looking at this passive bubble, index funds. So everybody, if the herd is going somewhere, they're leaving other areas. So you want to look at, what's across the index divide. So companies that don't necessarily fit into all of these ETFs. there's opportunity there as well. So there's always opportunity, but I think at this point, the best thing to do, the best advice would be, be patient, be ultra conservative, and try to watch this as much as you can from the sidelines and learn, get prepared, because that's when the big fortunes are made, when bubbles like this burst and you have capital and you're ready to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. I think they're going to be huge.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great point because, I actually wrote an article today that says, hope for the best, plan for the worst, which is, this is how we should approach investing is like, look, if everything goes wrong, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? And build a portfolio that can weather the worst possible thing. And then anything else that you do on top of that is just opportunistic, and it leads to better returns over time. And, when we're talking about passive investing and people herding into all these ETFs, the ETF is fine, but it's all the individual companies below that ultimately have to get liquidated. And, the one thing about passive investing that always makes me chuckle a bit is that passive investing is fine until the selling starts, and everybody becomes active sellers. And it doesn't matter what you own. It all goes down in price. And so being prepared for that, as you were talking about, is most important because, as you said before, there's a bubble in bonds. There's a bubble in high yield junk debt. And there's a bubble in asset prices. It's just about everywhere you look, there's a bubble in something, which means there's very little place for money to go to that'll be safe.
And as Jesse Colombo says, there's a bubble in bubbles, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for joining us today, Kevin Duffy. He is the co-founder of Bearing Asset Management, and of course, you can find him online on Twitter. Great Twitter follow. Be sure and do that. Kevin Duffy 1929. That's his handle there at Twitter. Join us for this entire podcast at our YouTube channel. Simply go by realinvestmentadvice.com, click on the YouTube tab, and get this interview and all of them at our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time on the next edition of the Lance Roberts Show podcast right here at realinvestmentadvice.com.
You can get daily real investment news you can use, delivered at the speed of the internet. Sign up for Lance's newsletter now at realinvestmentadvice.com.